I'm Audrey Mitchell, 34, and my life imploded with a single text from my mother. It's over between us. Don't believe anything your father says. Just hours after learning my parents had written me out of their will in favor of my younger brother. As I stared at those words, my father's name flashed on my screen. In my shock, the phone slipped from my trembling fingers, the screen shattering on impact, just like my heart. Before I dive into this nightmare, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button if you've ever felt betrayed by family, and subscribe to join me through this painful journey. Trust me, what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about loyalty. Growing up, I was always the responsible one. While other kids were having sleepovers and going to parties, I was studying until midnight, maintaining perfect grades, and helping around the house. My parents, William and Patricia Mitchell, had high expectations, and I was determined to meet every single one of them. My father built his real estate development company from nothing, and my mother stood by him every step of the way. The perfect, supportive wife. They expected nothing less than perfection from their children. My brother Ryan, on the other hand, was the golden child despite being a complete mess. 2 years younger than me, he could charm his way out of any trouble with his easy smile and quick excuses. When Ryan crashed Dad's car at 16, it was just a mistake. When I got a B+ in calculus that same year, it was a disappointment. The double standard was glaring, but I convinced myself it was normal. If I just worked harder, achieved more, maybe then I'd earn the same unconditional love they seemed to have for Ryan. After high school, I was accepted to Cornell with a partial scholarship. It was my dream school, but when our family business hit a rough patch, I made the responsible choice. I attended the local state university instead, living at home to save money while working part-time at the family company. Meanwhile, Ryan got to attend USC on our parents' dime, where he spent more time partying than studying, eventually dropping out in his junior year. You made the smart financial decision. My mother told me when I cried about giving up Cornell. Ryan needs more support to find his way. That was always the justification. Ryan needed more. Ryan required special attention. Ryan had potential if just given enough chances. After college, I built a successful marketing career through sheer determination, working nights and weekends to climb the corporate ladder. I paid off my student loans without help, bought my own condo, and created a stable life. Ryan bounced between jobs, living in an apartment our parents paid for while finding himself. The first major betrayal came 3 years ago. Ryan decided he wanted to open a nightclub. Despite having zero business experience, our parents invested $200,000 in his venture. 6 months later, the club closed amid allegations of mismanagement and Ryan's partying on the company dime. When I mentioned the unfairness of this, how they had refused to help with my education but threw money at Ryan's obvious failure, my father grew cold. He needs to learn from his mistakes, Dad said. And you've always been independent. It's what we love about you. That independence they claim to admire was never a choice. It was survival in a family where resources and affection flowed in only one direction. Despite everything, I maintained our monthly family dinners. Every first Sunday, I'd drive to their sprawling home in Wellesley, making polite conversation while swallowing my resentment. My friend Jillian couldn't understand why I kept going. "They don't appreciate you, Audrey," she'd say. "You don't need their approval anymore." But I did. Some childish part of me still craved their validation, still hoped that one day they would see me, really see me, and be proud. That Sunday morning, I stood before my bathroom mirror, applying concealer to dark circles from another sleepless night worrying about work deadlines. I practiced my composed face, the one that wouldn't flinch at another story about Ryan's latest opportunity. I rehearsed pleasant responses to inevitable questions about why I was still single at 34, as if my career success meant nothing without a husband. "Just get through dinner," I told my reflection. "Smile, nod, and leave early. You can do this." I had no idea that this particular dinner would shatter the fragile peace I'd managed to maintain with my family. No idea that by dessert, everything I thought I understood about my place in the Mitchell family would be exposed as a cruel illusion. My parents' home looked like something out of Architectural Digest, a colonial revival with perfectly manicured grounds. As I pulled into the circular driveway in my modest Audi, bought certified pre-owned, I noticed my mother watching from the bay window. She disappeared before I reached the front steps. "Audrey!" Right on time as always, my father greeted me with his usual hearty handshake instead of a hug. At 62, William Mitchell still maintained the commanding presence that had intimidated business associates for decades. His silver hair was perfectly coiffed, his casual Sunday clothes still somehow looking formal. My mother appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a designer apron she'd never actually cooked in. They had a private chef for Sunday dinners. "Hello, Audrey," she said, her kiss landing somewhere near my cheek. Something was off about her greeting, cooler than usual, her eyes not quite meeting mine. "Can I help with anything?" I offered, as always. "Everything's under control," she replied, as always. We moved to the living room where Dad immediately poured himself a scotch and began talking about his latest development project. I nodded at appropriate intervals while watching my mother. She seemed distracted, checking her phone frequently, her usual poise fractured by some invisible tension. "Is everything okay, Mom?" I asked during a pause in Dad's monologue. "Of course, dear. Just waiting to hear if Ryan will be late." Again. Her smile was tight. As if summoned by his name, the front door opened and Ryan's voice boomed through the foyer. "Sorry we're late. Traffic was insane." He entered with Sophia, his girlfriend of 8 months, a beautiful, charming interior designer my parents adored instantly. Ryan, like our father, had aged well, athletic build, maintained by the gym membership our parents paid for, designer clothes they funded, and the easy confidence of someone who had never faced real consequences. "Sis." He embraced me with dramatic affection. "Looking corporate as always. You need to let Sophia take you shopping sometime." I smiled tightly, noting his $300 jeans and the new Rolex on his wrist. "Some of us work for our luxuries, Ryan. And some of us work smart. Not hard," he countered with a wink. Dinner was served in the formal dining room, 4 courses prepared by Chef Anton, who had once worked in a Michelin-starred restaurant. The conversation flowed around me, Sophia discussing her latest design project, Ryan talking about a promising investment opportunity, my father nodding approvingly. My mother remained uncharacteristically quiet. It was during the main course, herb-crusted lamb with rosemary potatoes, when my father cleared his throat in that way that signaled an announcement. "Your mother and I have been doing some estate planning," he began casually, cutting into his lamb. "Important to have these things in order at our age." I nodded, taking a sip of wine. Standard conversation for them lately, reminders of their mortality, followed by assurances they were organizing everything properly. "We've decided to make some changes to our will and trust," he continued. "After careful consideration and consultation with our advisors, we've determined the best approach is to leave the entire estate to Ryan." The wine glass froze halfway to my mouth. Across the table, Ryan's expression of surprise wasn't quite convincing. "The entire estate?" I repeated, certain I'd misheard. My parents' wealth was substantial. The house, the business, investment properties, stock portfolios. Millions. "It makes the most sense," my father continued, as if discussing the weather. "Ryan will take over the business eventually. This simplifies the inheritance tax situation and keeps everything intact." "I see." My voice sounded distant to my own ears. "And what was the careful consideration that led to this decision?" My father sighed as if I was being difficult. "Audrey, you've always been independent. You have your career, your condo. Ryan's future is tied to the family business. He needs the structure and responsibility." I looked at my mother, waiting for her to say something, anything, but she stared at her plate, pushing food around without eating. "So my independence is being punished," I said quietly, "while Ryan's irresponsibility is being rewarded. Again. Now, that's not fair." My father's tone hardened. "This isn't about punishment or reward. It's about what makes sense for the family legacy." "The family legacy," I repeated, "which apparently I'm not part of." "Don't be dramatic, Audrey," Ryan interjected with false reasonableness. "Dad's just being practical. Besides, I'll always take care of you if you need anything." The condescension in his voice broke something inside me. Like I've ever needed your help, Ryan. Unlike you, I've managed to build a life without handouts. That's exactly the kind of materialistic attitude we're concerned about, my father said sharply. This reaction proves you're thinking about money, not family. I stood up, napkin falling to the floor. Family? Is that what you call this? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like I've never really been part of this family at all. Sophia looked uncomfortable. My mother still wouldn't meet my eyes. Ryan had the audacity to appear wounded. I think I've lost my appetite, I said, placing my hands on the table to steady myself. Thank you for dinner. I drove home in a blur of tears, barely seeing the road. My phone rang repeatedly, Ryan's name flashing on the screen. Finally, I answered on Bluetooth. What do you want? Sis, you're overreacting, he said, his voice a practiced mix of concern and condescension. This doesn't change anything between us, doesn't it? Tell me honestly, Ryan. Did you know about this before tonight? His hesitation was answer enough. That's what I thought, I said. Look, Dad's just trying to protect the business. You know how he is. It's not personal. I laughed bitterly. Not personal? They're writing me out of their lives, and it's not personal? Nobody's writing you out of anything. Come on, Audrey. You've always been the sensible one. Think about it logically. I hung up, unable to bear another second of his false sympathy. The brother I'd protected and loved, despite his flaws, had betrayed me in the most fundamental way, and he didn't even have the decency to acknowledge it. Monday morning arrived with the cruel brightness of early summer. I hadn't slept more than 2 hours, my mind replaying dinner like a horror film on repeat. I dragged myself to work, grateful for the distraction of quarterly marketing reports and campaign deadlines. At 10:17 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text. My mother's name appeared on the screen, surprising me. She rarely texted, preferring calls or, better yet, handwritten notes on monogrammed stationery. It's over between us. Don't believe anything your father says. I stared at the words, reading them over and over. What did she mean? Was this about me? About their marriage? About the will? I immediately tried calling her, but the call went straight to voicemail. I texted back, Mom, what's going on? Are you okay? No response. I tried again. Nothing. 20 minutes later, my father called. I let it ring 4 times before answering, my heart pounding. Audrey, has your mother contacted you? His voice had an unfamiliar edge, not anger, but something close to panic. Why? What's happened? She's acting crazy, making things up. If she reaches out, don't listen to her. She's not well. What do you mean, not well? Dad, what's going on? It's nothing for you to worry about. Just a misunderstanding. If she contacts you, let me know immediately. Dad. He'd already hung up. I sat at my desk, hands shaking. In 15 years of working in corporate environments, I'd never taken a personal day. I considered it now, but what would I do? Drive to my parents' house? Confront my father? Search for my mother? Instead, I stared blankly at my computer screen, attempting to focus on the social media analytics report due that afternoon. The words and numbers blurred together. Audrey, did you hear me? I looked up to find my boss, Martin Collins, standing in my office doorway. I'm sorry, what? I asked if you'll have the Q2 projections ready for the board meeting tomorrow. His brow furrowed. Are you feeling all right? You look pale. I'm fine. Just a family situation. The projections will be ready. After Martin left, I texted Jillian, my closest friend since college. Family emergency. Need to talk. Lunch? We met at a small cafe 2 blocks from my office. I'd barely sat down before everything spilled out: the will, the dinner, the mysterious text, my father's strange call. Whoa, Jillian said when I finally paused for breath. That's a lot to process. What do you think your mom meant? I have no idea. She and my dad have been married for 36 years. They've always been a united front, especially when it comes to Ryan. Maybe she didn't agree with the will decision? Maybe your dad forced her hand. I shook my head. Mom has never stood up to Dad about anything important. Why start now? People have breaking points, Audrey. Even your mother. As we talked, I remembered something odd from the previous week, a notification from my bank about an attempted login to my investment account from an unrecognized device. I'd dismissed it as a glitch or phishing attempt. Do you think someone could be trying to access my finances? I asked Jillian. After they've cut you out of the will? That would be bizarrely coincidental. Jillian leaned forward. You need to investigate what's really going on. That afternoon, I was reviewing contracts when I overheard our CFO in the hallway, speaking in hushed tones about Mitchell Properties and financial irregularities. He went silent when he noticed me, smiling awkwardly before hurrying away. My father's company was one of our minor clients. We handled some of their marketing materials. Why would our CFO be discussing them with such concern? By 5 p.m., with still no response from my mother, I decided to drive to my parents' house unannounced. The familiar drive to Wellesley felt different now, heavy with apprehension. The house was eerily quiet when I arrived. My father's Mercedes was missing from the garage, but my mother's Lexus was also gone unusual, as they rarely drove separate vehicles. Using my emergency key, I let myself in. Mom? Dad? My voice echoed through the marble foyer. The house felt abandoned somehow, though nothing was visibly out of place. In my parents' bedroom, I noticed subtle differences, empty spaces on my mother's vanity, where her favorite perfumes should be, the absence of the small jewelry box that held her everyday pieces. The closet door was ajar, revealing gaps in the normally meticulous row of designer clothing. My mother hadn't just stepped out. She had packed a bag. She had left. As I stood in their bedroom, trying to process what this meant, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop looking. You won't like what you find. The threatening text crystallized my determination. Something was seriously wrong, and I needed answers. The next morning, I called Nathan Wells, a childhood friend who had worked as an accountant at Mitchell Properties for the past 5 years. We hadn't spoken much recently. My father discouraged fraternization with employees, but I hoped our history would count for something. Can we meet? Off the record? I asked when he answered. His hesitation was palpable. Audrey, this isn't a good time. It's important, Nathan. Please. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop halfway between our offices' neutral territory. Nathan arrived looking nervous, his tie loosened, dark circles under his eyes, suggesting recent sleepless nights. I probably shouldn't be talking to you, he said immediately, voice low despite the coffee shop's ambient noise. If your father found out what, Nathan? What's going on with the company? He stared into his untouched coffee. You really don't know, do you? Know what? Nathan sighed heavily. Mitchell Properties is on the verge of bankruptcy, Audrey. Has been for months. Your father has been shuffling funds, cooking books, trying to keep it afloat, but it's a sinking ship. The news hit like a physical blow. My father's company had been a pillar of stability my entire life, the source of our family's wealth and status. That's impossible. Dad just secured the waterfront project last quarter. Nathan's laugh was hollow. The waterfront project is a shell game. Your father leveraged everything to create the appearance of having the capital to break ground. It's all smoke and mirrors. How do you know this? Because I've been forced to help hide it. Shame colored his face. Your father has been siphoning company funds for years, moving money between accounts, creating fake subsidiaries. I thought it was just creative accounting at first. But he shook his head. And Ryan? Is he involved? Ryan knows. He's been helping your father move assets offshore for the past year, setting up accounts your mother can't access. The pieces started falling into place, the will change, my mother's text, my father's panic. My mother found out, didn't she? Nathan nodded. 2 weeks ago. Your father had been pressuring her to sign documents transferring property into Ryan's name properties that were part of her inheritance from her parents. When she started asking questions, things got ugly. I felt sick. Has my father threatened her? I don't know specifics, but there was an incident at the office. Shouting behind closed doors. Your mother left in tears. Security was told not to let her in the building after that. After Nathan left extracting my promise not to reveal him as my source, I sat alone, trying to process everything. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. We need to talk. Dinner tonight? I agreed, choosing a busy restaurant where he couldn't make a scene. Ryan arrived 20 minutes late, looking surprisingly disheveled for someone so appearance-conscious. "You've been asking questions," he said without preamble. "You need to stop." "Where's Mom, Ryan?" "She's fine. She's just being dramatic, blowing things out of proportion." "Like Dad's financial fraud? Is she blowing that out of proportion?" Ryan's face hardened. "You don't understand the pressure Dad's been under. The business—" "Don't." I cut him off. "Don't try to justify what he's done. What you've helped him do." "I was protecting our family legacy," he hissed. "Someone had to step up. By stealing from Mom? By hiding assets? That's not protection, Ryan. That's theft. Stay out of this, Audrey. I mean it. You start digging, and everyone gets hurt, including you." The threat wasn't subtle. I stared at my brother. This person who shared my blood but suddenly seemed like a stranger. Is that why Dad changed the will? To protect his stolen assets? Ryan's silence was confirmation enough. That night, I drove to my parents' home again, using the security code to enter while my father was supposedly at a business dinner. I headed straight for his home office, the inner sanctum where I'd rarely been allowed as a child. The office was locked, but years ago, I'd watched my father hide a spare key inside a hollowed-out book on the adjacent bookshelf, Sun Tzu's Art of War, appropriately enough. The irony wasn't lost on me as I used it to unlock his door. Inside, I searched frantically, knowing my time was limited. Most documents would be digital, but my father was old school enough to keep physical copies of important papers. Behind a painting of the first Mitchell Properties building, I found a small safe. The combination my mother's birthday revealed, my father's sentimentality had created a security weakness. Inside were property deeds, offshore account numbers, and a series of letters from the company's primary bank warning of loan covenant violations. Most damning was a folder labeled Patricia Assets containing documents with what appeared to be my mother's forged signature. I was photographing these documents when I heard the front door open. Heart pounding, I quickly replaced everything, locked the safe, and slipped out the office window into the garden just as my father's heavy footsteps approached down the hall. The next day, I hired Luis Ramirez, a private investigator recommended by a colleague, to find my mother. While waiting for results, I received a disturbing email from the HR department at work. A complaint had been filed against me for erratic behavior and concerning personal conduct. The source was anonymous, but the timing was too perfect to be coincidental. 2 days later, Ramirez called with news. "I've located your mother," he said. "She's staying at a cabin in the Berkshires. Property records show it's owned by Elizabeth Pearson, my Aunt Elizabeth, my mother's older sister. They weren't close, which made it the perfect hiding place." As I was processing this information, Ramirez added something that turned my blood cold. "Miss Mitchell, I should mention that your mother filed for divorce 3 days ago. The papers were served to your father yesterday." The divorce filing changed everything. My father would now be fighting on 2 fronts: the impending financial collapse of his company and the dissolution of his marriage. A desperate man was a dangerous one, and William Mitchell had resources, connections, and decades of practice at getting his way. Through careful monitoring of the court filings' public records, accessible to anyone who knew where to look, I discovered my father was attempting to claim my mother was mentally unstable and financially incompetent. He had already frozen joint accounts and was challenging her right to any business assets. Ryan was actively helping him, providing affidavits about our mother's erratic behavior and paranoid accusations. The brother who had once climbed into my bed during thunderstorms, seeking comfort from his big sister, was now systematically helping destroy our mother's reputation and financial security. The family battle lines were quickly drawn. My father's siblings rallied behind him, the successful patriarch they had always admired and envied. My mother's family, smaller and less influential, supported her but from a distance. Family friends chose sides, most backing my father based on his public persona as a respected businessman and philanthropist. My own reputation wasn't spared. Rumors began circulating in professional circles that I was unstable, that family drama was affecting my work performance. When an important client suddenly canceled a contract my team had spent months securing, my boss called me into his office. "Is there something you need to tell me, Audrey?" Martin asked, his expression a mix of concern and disappointment. What do you mean? I had lunch with William Mitchell yesterday. He's worried about you, says you've been making accusations, harassing family members. He mentioned you might be having a difficult time. My father's reach was longer than I'd anticipated. Martin and he belonged to the same country club, a connection I'd never considered significant until now. My father is lying, I said flatly. He's involved in financial impropriety, and he's trying to discredit anyone who might expose him. Martin's expression turned skeptical. These are serious allegations against a respected businessman. I hope you have evidence before making such claims. I didn't mention the documents I'd photographed. Trust had become a luxury I couldn't afford. That evening, I returned to my condo to find the door slightly ajar. Inside, my normally immaculate living room was in disarray, drawers emptied, books pulled from shelves. My laptop was gone, along with the external hard drive where I'd stored the photos of my father's documents. The break-in looked random to an untrained eye, but I knew better. The violation of my home, my sanctuary, pushed me past fear into cold anger. I was staying at a hotel when I received a call from an unexpected source. Sophia, Ryan's girlfriend. We need to meet, she said, her voice tense. Not on the phone. We arranged to meet in the public garden, where crowds would make it difficult for anyone to eavesdrop. Sophia arrived wearing large sunglasses despite the cloudy day, constantly checking over her shoulder. Ryan doesn't know I'm talking to you, she began. He'd be furious. Why are you here, Sophia? Because what they're doing to your mother is wrong. And because, she hesitated, I've been helping them. The betrayal stung even though I barely knew her. How? Ryan asked me to get close to you to find out what you knew, what you were planning. I've been reporting back to him for months. The friendly shopping invitations, the coffee dates, the seemingly genuine interest in my life, all reconnaissance. Why tell me now? Because I heard your father talking about having you fired, about ruining your professional reputation. And Ryan didn't defend you. He suggested ways to make it worse. Her voice broke. I got into this thinking it was just family drama, but it's gone too far. As Sophia walked away after revealing everything she knew about my father and Ryan's plans, I felt a moment of paranoia. Was this another trap, a way to feed me false information? Trust had become impossible. That night, walking back to my hotel, a car swerved toward me as I crossed the street. I jumped back just in time, catching only a glimpse of the driver, but enough to recognize Ryan's profile before the car sped away. Whether it was meant as a warning or worse, the message was clear. The stakes had escalated beyond money and reputation. My safety was now at risk. The cabin in the Berkshires was a 3-hour drive from Boston, tucked away on a wooded lot at the end of a gravel road. Rain had been falling steadily for hours, turning the unpaved driveway into a muddy obstacle course that my city sedan barely navigated. By the time I reached the small A-frame structure, darkness had fallen, and the storm had intensified lightning, illuminating the trees in brief, ghostly flashes, thunder rolling across the mountains. It seemed fitting weather for the confrontation ahead. I approached the cabin cautiously, noting the single vehicle parked outside my mother's Lexus, confirmation that Ramirez's information was correct. Through the window, I could see a fire burning in the hearth, a solitary figure sitting before it. I knocked, heart pounding. Footsteps approached, and the door opened to reveal my mother, looking smaller somehow without her usual perfect makeup and designer clothes, wearing just jeans and an oversized sweater. Her face registered shock, then fear. Audrey, how did you find me? Did your father? I came alone, Mom. No one followed me. She pulled me inside quickly, checking the darkness behind me before securing multiple locks on the door. The cabin was rustic but comfortable, one large room with a loft bedroom above. Minimal furniture, stacks of books on every surface. You shouldn't be here, she said, but her arms wrapped around me in a fierce embrace that contradicted her words. It's not safe. That's why I came. What's happening, Mom? Your text, the divorce filing. I need to understand. She gestured toward the worn sofa before the fireplace. As we sat, I noticed subtle changes in her appearance. She'd lost weight, and strands of gray now threaded through her usually perfectly colored hair. Most striking was the absence of her ever-present diamond wedding ring. "I've been a fool for 36 years, she began, voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. "I believed in your father's vision, his business acumen, his integrity. I trusted him with everything, my inheritance, my future, my children." Her gaze met mine. "I failed you, Audrey. I see that now." "Mom, what did you discover?" 3 weeks ago, I was looking for a tax document in your father's office. I found account statements for offshore companies I'd never heard of, millions of dollars hidden in the Caymans, in Singapore. When I confronted him, he claimed they were legitimate business accounts. She stood, pacing before the fire. I might have believed him, but then I found more documents, loan applications with my signature that I never signed, property transfers I never approved. He's been systematically moving our assets for years, preparing for something. "The company is failing," I said. Nathan confirmed it. My mother nodded. "When I threatened to go to the authorities, your father..." She faltered. "Did he hurt you?" I asked, anger rising. "Not physically, but he threatened to destroy me financially, socially. Said he would claim I was unstable, alcoholic, that I'd forged the documents myself." And Ryan backed him completely. The betrayal by her son clearly wounded her more deeply than anything else. "Ryan has always worshipped your father, emulated him in everything. When forced to choose, there was never any question where his loyalty would lie." She retrieved a folder from a locked cabinet. "I managed to take these before your father realized what I knew." Inside were bank statements, property records, and most damning, emails between my father and Ryan discussing how to hide assets from Patricia's lawyers and plans to secure Audrey's cooperation or neutralize her interference. "The will change was part of their plan," my mother explained. "Moving everything to Ryan meant I couldn't claim half the estate in a divorce. And they knew you were the wild card, the one person whose ethics couldn't be compromised." As we talked through the night, the full picture emerged. Years of financial manipulation, secret accounts, forged documents. My father had been preparing for potential bankruptcy for years, hiding assets that should have gone to creditors. Ryan had become his willing accomplice, promised a generous percentage of the hidden funds for his cooperation. "What are you going to do?" I asked as dawn approached. "Fight," she said simply. "I've hired Rebecca Torres. She specializes in high-conflict divorces involving financial fraud. Your father underestimates me. He always has." The sound of tires on gravel interrupted our conversation. Through the window, I saw an unfamiliar SUV approaching, headlights cutting through the morning mist. "Are you expecting someone?" I asked, alarm rising. My mother's face drained of color. "No one knows I'm here except Elizabeth and my lawyer." I peered through the curtains again as two figures emerged from the vehicle, my father and Ryan, both looking grim and determined. "They've found us," I whispered. "How?" Understanding dawned on my mother's face. "My phone. I kept it turned off, but I checked messages last night." We grabbed the documents and her emergency bag, heading for the back door. As we slipped out, my father's voice boomed from the front of the cabin. "Patricia, open the door. We just want to talk." The woods behind the cabin offered our only escape route. As we pushed through the underbrush, my father and Ryan circled around, cutting off our path to my car. "This is ridiculous," my father called out. "You're both acting crazy. We're family. Stay away from us, William," my mother replied, her voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. Ryan moved toward us. "Mom, please. Dad just wants to work things out." "By threatening her? By stealing her inheritance?" I demanded. "You don't understand business, Audrey." My father sneered. "Sometimes tough decisions have to be made. Fraud isn't a tough decision. It's a crime." Ryan lunged suddenly, grabbing for the folder in my hands. As we struggled, my mother tried to intervene. Ryan shoved her aside, harder than necessary. She fell, crying out as her ankle twisted beneath her. Something in me snapped at the sight of my mother on the ground, clutching her leg in pain. I drove my knee upward, catching Ryan completely by surprise. As he doubled over, I grabbed my mother's arm, helping her to her feet. "This isn't over," my father called as we half ran, half limped toward the main road. "You'll regret this, both of you." We managed to flag down a passing truck driver who, seeing my mother's condition, drove us to the nearest urgent care clinic. As she was being treated for a sprained ankle, I called Rebecca Torres, explaining our situation. "Stay where you are," the attorney instructed. "I'm sending someone to bring you both to a safe location. And Audrey, don't use your credit cards or phone. They'll be tracking those." Hours later, in a nondescript hotel room paid for in cash, my mother and I sat surrounded by documents, our evidence, our ammunition in the war that had now been officially declared. The folder containing proof of William Mitchell's financial crimes had become our most valuable possession and our greatest danger. Number Part 8. The Counterattack. Rebecca Torres was nothing like I expected. Instead of the power-suited, aggressive attorney stereotype, she was a petite woman in her 50s with salt and pepper haircut in a practical bob, speaking with a slight Texas drawl that belied her Harvard law education. But her reputation was fearsome. She had taken down corrupt executives, won seemingly impossible cases, and never, ever backed down from a fight. "Your father has made 3 critical mistakes," she explained during our first strategy session in her downtown office. "First, he left a paper trail. Second, he involved Ryan, who doesn't have the experience to cover their tracks properly. And third," she smiled tightly, "he underestimated both of you." My mother, her ankle wrapped in an elastic bandage, sat straighter at these words. "We need to be strategic," Rebecca continued. "William has resources, connections, and he's already moving to control the narrative. But we have something he doesn't. The truth," my mother said quietly. "The truth with documentation to back it up." The legal strategy took shape. My mother would pursue divorce on grounds of financial misconduct, while simultaneously working with Rebecca to report my father's financial crimes to the appropriate authorities. My role would be to secure additional evidence and protect what we already had. I took a leave of absence from work, citing family emergency. My boss was reluctant but agreed when I hinted at potential legal issues that might affect the company if they terminated me during this time. I moved into Jillian's guest room, grateful for her offer of a safe harbor. "Stay as long as you need," she insisted, helping me install new security software on my devices. "Your father can't touch you here." 3 days into our counter-offensive, I received a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. It's Ryan. Please meet me." Against Rebecca's advice, I agreed to meet my brother at a coffee shop near Jillian's apartment, public, busy, and with multiple exits. I arrived early, choosing a table with clear sightlines to all entrances. Ryan appeared looking haggard, designer stubble now more neglect than style. "You look terrible," I observed as he sat down. "So do you," he countered, though without his usual smugness. "Audrey, this has gone too far. Dad is. He's not handling this well." "You mean he's angry his schemes are falling apart?" Ryan leaned forward. "You don't understand. There's more at stake than you know. Dad is facing serious consequences if this goes public, not just bankruptcy, but potential criminal charges. That's what happens when you commit fraud, Ryan." "He's our father," he insisted, a note of desperation in his voice. "Despite everything, doesn't that count for something? He raised us, provided for us. He also stole from Mom, threatened her, tried to destroy my career, and sent you to physically intimidate us at the cabin. So no, being our biological father doesn't earn him a pass." Ryan's expression shifted. "I never meant to hurt Mom, you have to believe that." For a moment, I glimpsed my little brother again, the boy who'd come to me with scraped knees and broken toys, seeking comfort and solutions. But then his gaze hardened. "Where is she, Audrey? Where's Mom staying?" The meeting wasn't about reconciliation, it was reconnaissance. Ryan was still working for our father, still trying to locate our mother to pressure or threaten her. "We're done here," I said, standing to leave. "Audrey, wait. Dad knows people. Important people. This won't end well for any of us." His warning followed me out the door, settling like a weight across my shoulders. The next day, we discovered how right Ryan was about our father's connections. My mother's bank accounts, separate from the joint accounts my father had already frozen, were suddenly inaccessible due to a security review. Her credit cards were declined. Even her cell phone service was cut off. "He's trying to smoke us out," Rebecca explained during an emergency meeting. "Make your mother desperate enough to agree to his terms." What my father hadn't counted on was my mother's newfound resolve. Patricia Mitchell, who had spent decades as the perfect corporate wife, discovered she had a spine of steel beneath her cashmere sweaters. "I lived on ramen noodles during college," she said with surprising calm. "I can do without Neiman Marcus for a while." Our unexpected ally came in the form of Diane Reynolds, my father's executive assistant of 15 years. She contacted me through Rebecca, requesting a meeting. "Your father fired me last week," she explained over coffee at a small bakery far from the financial district. "Said the company was restructuring." After 15 years, not even a proper severance, Diane had been secretly documenting irregularities in the company finances for years, questionable wire transfers, meetings not listed in official calendars, documents she'd been asked to shred but had copied first. "I always knew something wasn't right," she said, sliding a USB drive across the table. "But I have a daughter in college. I needed the job." The drive contained emails, financial records, and most damaging, recordings of conversations in which my father explicitly discussed hiding assets and defrauding creditors. It was a goldmine of evidence and my father's potential downfall. While we strengthened our legal position, my professional reputation continued to suffer. Through industry contacts, I learned I'd been passed over for a significant promotion, one I'd been all but promised due to concerns about my personal situation and emotional stability. The whisper campaign my father had initiated was working. The psychological toll was becoming unbearable. I developed insomnia, jumping at unexpected noises, checking and rechecking door locks. Panic attacks struck without warning in grocery stores, during phone calls, once while simply crossing the street. Jillian found me one night sitting on the bathroom floor, hyperventilating, unable to explain what had triggered it. "You can't keep going like this," she said, sitting beside me on the cold tiles. "He's winning if he destroys your health." "I can't let him win," I whispered. "Not after what he did to Mom." "To us?" "Fighting doesn't always mean staying in the ring until you're knocked out," Jillian countered. "Sometimes it means being strategic about when and how you engage." She was right. I'd been so focused on gathering evidence, on legal maneuvers, on protecting my mother, that I'd neglected my own well-being. The next day, I began seeing Dr. Levine, a therapist specializing in family trauma and betrayal. "What you're experiencing is normal," she assured me during our first session. "Your entire foundation, your understanding of your family, your place in it, your history has been revealed as partially false. That's deeply disorienting." With her help, I began developing coping mechanisms for the anxiety, techniques to ground myself when panic threatened to overwhelm me. It wasn't an immediate fix, but it gave me tools to continue the fight without falling apart. As Rebecca prepared to file additional legal motions, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Miss Mitchell? This is Martin Sullivan, your father's business partner." My father had several business partners over the years, but Martin Sullivan was the most significant and old money investor who had backed many of Mitchell Properties' largest developments. "I think we should meet," he continued when I didn't immediately respond. "There are aspects to this situation you may not be aware of." I almost declined, suspecting another trap. But Sullivan had a reputation for ethics that even my father's worst enemies acknowledged. "I'll hear what you have to say," I agreed cautiously. "But I'm bringing my attorney." Martin Sullivan selected an upscale steakhouse for our meeting, neutral territory, with enough ambient noise for privacy. Rebecca accompanied me, her presence both reassuring and tactical. Sullivan arrived precisely on time, a distinguished man in his 60s with impeccable tailoring and the easy confidence of generational wealth. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," he began after introductions. "I've known your father for 30 years, Miss Mitchell. I considered him a friend as well as a business partner." "Past tense noted," Rebecca observed. Sullivan nodded. "For good reason. 3 months ago, I began noticing discrepancies in project financing. Properties being used as collateral multiple times. Investor funds being redirected. When I confronted William, he gave plausible explanations. I chose to believe him. His expression hardened. "That was a mistake. What Sullivan revealed next exceeded even our worst suspicions. My father's financial misconduct stretched back nearly a decade, systematic fraud designed to maintain the appearance of success, while the company gradually hollowed out from within. The waterfront project, meant to be Mitchell Properties' crowning achievement, was built entirely on fraudulent financing. I've already spoken with federal investigators, Sullivan concluded, but I wanted to meet with you directly because there's something else you should know. William plans to leave the country. Soon. Rebecca leaned forward. How soon? This weekend. Private jet to a non-extradition country. He's liquidating everything he can. And Ryan? I asked, dreading the answer. Going with him. As I understand it. They've been moving money offshore for months. Once they're gone, recovering any of it will be nearly impossible. After Sullivan left, Rebecca and I formulated a plan, a trap designed to secure evidence and prevent my father and brother's escape. We would need my mother's participation, federal authorities' cooperation, and perfect timing. It's risky, Rebecca warned. Your father is desperate, which makes him dangerous. We don't have a choice, I replied. If they leave the country, it's over. The plan was deceptively simple. I would contact Ryan, claiming I wanted to negotiate, to find middle ground before things escalated further. I would suggest a family dinner at Marcello's, my father's favorite restaurant, where he was known to let his guard down. There, with recording devices in place and federal agents nearby, we would obtain the final evidence needed for prosecution while preventing their flight. Ryan was suspicious when I called, but the opportunity to resolve the situation before his planned departure proved too tempting to refuse. Dad will be reluctant, he warned. After everything that's happened, tell him it's his last chance to resolve this quietly, I replied, the words bitter on my tongue. Tell him Mom is wavering, looking for a way out that doesn't involve courts. The night of the dinner arrived with a sense of finality. Rebecca had arranged everything, the recording devices disguised as jewelry, the federal agents posing as restaurant staff, the legal papers ready to be served. My mother, elegant despite the strain of recent weeks, sat beside me in the car as we drove to what would be our final confrontation as a family. Are you ready for this? I asked, noting the tremble in her hands. I've been rehearsing what to say to your father for 36 years, she replied with unexpected wryness. I think I'm prepared. Marcello's private dining room was intimidatingly luxurious crystal chandeliers, heavy brocade curtains, and a table set for 4 with the finest china and silver. My father and Ryan were already seated when we arrived, both rising automatically at our entrance, good manners preserved even as everything else collapsed around us. William Mitchell, despite recent setbacks, still projected authority in his bespoke suit and perfectly knotted tie. Only the new lines around his eyes and mouth betrayed the pressure he was under. Patricia. Audrey. His greeting was formal, as if we were business associates rather than family. I'm glad you've come to your senses. My mother's spine straightened. I wouldn't describe it that way, William. Ryan looked uncomfortable, gaze darting between us. Let's just try to have a civilized conversation, okay? For once. Dinner proceeded with excruciating politeness. We discussed the weather, mutual acquaintances, anything but the elephant in the room. My father ordered his usual scotch, then another. Ryan followed suit. As the alcohol loosened their tongues, the facade began to crack. I've made an offer through Rebecca that's more than fair, my father finally stated, setting down his glass with unnecessary force. Half the liquid assets. The house in Wellesley. You'd be set for life, Patricia. Half of what you haven't already hidden, you mean? My mother replied calmly. What about the accounts in Singapore? In the Caymans? My father's expression didn't change, but something hardened in his eyes. I don't know what you're talking about. We have the account numbers, Dad, I interjected, and documentation of the transfers. Martin Sullivan has been quite helpful. The mention of his business partner's name struck home. My father's composure slipped, just for an instant, before he regained control. Martin is overreacting to standard business practices. Nothing illegal has occurred. Ryan, less practiced at deception, looked increasingly uneasy. Maybe we should discuss this privately, Dad. There's nothing to discuss, my father snapped. Your mother is making wild accusations based on documents she doesn't understand. It was time. Following our plan, I pressed for specifics about the waterfront project financing. As my father launched into a practiced explanation, the private dining room door opened. My mother entered, whom my father thought was sitting across from him. William froze mid-sentence, gaze darting between the two identical women. The confusion lasted only seconds before understanding dawned. The woman who had accompanied me, who had been recording his damning explanations, was not Patricia Mitchell but her identical twin sister Elizabeth the aunt, whose existence my father had always minimized. "What is this?" he demanded, standing abruptly. "This is the truth finally coming to light," my mother said, moving to stand beside her sister. "No more lies, William. No more manipulation." Ryan half rose. "Dad, we should go." "Sit down, Mr. Mitchell." The command came from the supposed waiter, now standing in the doorway, Agent Harris of the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, badge now visible. "No one is going anywhere." What followed was controlled chaos. Federal agents entered, serving search warrants and arrest warrants simultaneously. My father, realizing the trap, lunged toward me, whether to attack or escape, I'll never know. Ryan, in a last desperate attempt to salvage the situation, tried to blame everything on our father. He forced me to help him. I had no choice. As the agents led my father away, he fixed me with a gaze of pure hatred. "You've destroyed this family," he said, voice cold with fury. "Everything I built, everything I did, was for you and Ryan." "You ungrateful." "That's enough, Mr. Mitchell," Agent Harris interrupted, guiding him firmly toward the door. Ryan, handcuffs now secured around his wrists, made one final plea as he passed me. "Audrey, please, help me. I'm your brother." The words that had once held such power, family, loyalty, blood, now rang hollow. "You should have remembered that before you helped him steal from our mother," I replied, watching as he too was led away. In the sudden quiet of the private dining room, my mother, her sister, and I stood in a circle of shared triumph and devastation. The Mitchell family, as we had known it, was gone forever. But something new, something based on truth rather than manipulation, had begun to take its place. 6 months after that fateful dinner at Marcello's, I stood at the window of my mother's newly renovated kitchen, watching autumn leaves drift across the lawn of the Wellesley house. Though legally hers in the divorce settlement, she had initially been reluctant to return. Too many painful memories lingering in its elegant rooms. It needed to be reclaimed, she had explained when she finally decided to move back. Not as William Mitchell's showplace, but as my home. The renovation had been therapeutic for her, stripping away dark wood paneling for light colors, replacing imposing furniture with comfortable pieces, transforming my father's intimidating office into a bright studio where she had begun painting again, a passion abandoned in early marriage. My father awaited trial on multiple charges of fraud, tax evasion, and witness intimidation. His legal team had managed to secure bail, but the electronic monitoring ankle bracelet and surrender of his passport ensured he remained in Massachusetts. Most of his associates had abandoned him. Country club memberships revoked, social invitations rescinded. The mighty William Mitchell had fallen spectacularly from grace. Ryan had fared marginally better, making a deal with prosecutors in exchange for testimony against our father. He would still serve time reduced, but not eliminated. During his pre-trial release, he had attempted to contact me several times, claiming remorse, seeking reconciliation. I wasn't ready. Perhaps I never would be. As for me, I had rebuilt professionally after the initial damage to my reputation. When the full story of my father's crimes became public, former colleagues reached out with apologies and job offers. I accepted a position at a smaller firm where my talents were appreciated, with a substantial promotion and the flexibility to help my mother manage the remaining family assets. "Tea's ready," my mother announced, setting a tray on the kitchen island. At 58, Patricia Mitchell had emerged from her husband's shadow with surprising resilience. Therapy had helped her recognize the subtle emotional abuse that had characterized her marriage, the gradual erosion of her confidence and independence that had made her vulnerable to my father's manipulation. "Is Elizabeth joining us?" I asked, accepting a steaming cup. "Not today. She's visiting her grandchildren in Connecticut." My mother smiled. Having my sister back in my life has been one of the few blessings from this ordeal. We settled in the sunroom, a new addition that overlooked the garden. Jillian would be arriving later for dinner, along with Nathan Wells, whose friendship had evolved into something more in recent months. His quiet stability and unwavering support during the worst days had revealed qualities I had overlooked for years. "I received a letter from Ryan yesterday," my mother said carefully, watching my reaction. "He's been attending therapy while awaiting sentencing." His therapist suggested writing amends letters. I tensed. "What did you do with it?" "I read it." She set down her cup. "I'm not ready to forgive him, but I'm trying to understand. He was shaped by your father just as we were, in different ways. Understanding doesn't erase what he did," I pointed out. "No. But it helps me release some of the anger. Carrying it was exhausting me." She reached for my hand. "You don't have to read his letter. Your healing journey is your own." My weekly sessions with Dr. Levine had helped me navigate the complex grief of losing my family as I had known it. The panic attacks had subsided, though certain triggers, business meetings reminiscent of my father's style, unexpected financial questions could still unleash a wave of anxiety. "I keep thinking about what I missed," I admitted. "All those years, the signs were there: Dad's controlling behavior, the double standards, the emotional manipulation. How did I not see it?" "We see what we're conditioned to see," my mother replied. "I was his wife for 36 years and missed far more than you did. We trusted because that's what families are supposed to do. I'm not sure I know how to trust anyone fully again. That's the hardest part of betrayal," she agreed. "But look at what you've built already: your friendship with Jillian, your relationship with Nathan, our new bond. Trust with awareness isn't the same as blind faith." She was right. The painful collapse of our family had cleared space for healthier connections. My relationship with my mother had transformed from the formal, somewhat distant dynamic of my childhood to a genuine friendship between equals. I had learned to value the people who showed up when everything fell apart, rather than those who presented well during the good times. "I've been thinking about starting a support group," my mother said, surprising me. "For women like me who discover financial infidelity late in marriage, who have to rebuild from scratch." "That's a wonderful idea. You have so much wisdom to share now." Her smile held both sadness and determination. "I want something meaningful to come from all this pain. Some lesson that might help others avoid what we experienced." As the afternoon light softened into evening, we prepared dinner together, moving around the kitchen with the comfortable rhythm we'd developed over months of healing together. This new tradition, Sunday cooking rather than being served by staff in formal dining, represented everything that had changed. When the doorbell announced Jillian and Nathan's arrival, my mother squeezed my hand once more. "Family isn't defined by blood or inheritance," she said softly. "It's built through love and truth. Remember that, Audrey. It's the most important lesson from all of this." Watching her greet our guests with genuine warmth, I felt a sense of peace that had been absent for most of my life. The Mitchell family had been shattered, but from those broken pieces, we were creating something authentic. Something that couldn't be taken away by lies or betrayal. The path forward wouldn't be smooth or straight. There would be difficult decisions about Ryan, about forgiveness, about how much of our father would remain in our lives after justice took its course. But for the first time, those decisions would be made with clear eyes and strong boundaries, without manipulation or false loyalty. As we gathered around the table, not the imposing mahogany monstrosity of my childhood, but a simple farmhouse table my mother had found at an antique store, I realized that losing my inheritance had given me something far more valuable: the truth about my family, and the freedom to build a life based on genuine connection rather than obligation. Some betrayals, it seemed, were actually doorways to liberation if you were brave enough to walk through them. Thank you so much for joining me through this difficult journey. I'd love to know if you've ever experienced family betrayal and how you handled it. Did you forgive, set boundaries, or walk away completely? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. If my story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life experiences. Remember that healing is never linear, and we're all just doing our best with the cards we're dealt. Until next time, take care of yourself and those you truly trust.